am happy to introduce our next panel. So this is going to lead us into lunch. At lunch, we're just going to have bagged lunches, and you're more than welcome to eat inside the longhouse, or you can go outside and enjoy the beautiful heat. It's already getting very, very hot outside. I don't know if you guys went out there or not, but I'm ready to take this vest off. So our next session is Land Defenders, Artists Confronting Arctic Colonialism. Artists are often on the front lines of calls for social change and social justice. I'd like to allow these artists to join us today from across the circumpolar north as they discuss their ongoing efforts to assert Indigenous sovereignty and confront colonialism throughout the north. And I'd like to introduce our first moderator, actually, Beaska. So I'm going to leave the floor over to Beaska. Round of applause.
Thank you. Really good pronunciation. It's not that often you nail it right away. Yes, I'll keep it very short in the start, and we just go straight into the participants introducing themselves. And I like to go with the sun or clockwise, whatever. So we'll start over here.
Hello, say Uje Melaw Nakehk'o. I am Dene Suthlene from Tlitlikwe First Nations in Denende, also known as the Northwest Territories. I am a founding member of Dene Nawo, a nonprofit organization. Our vision is land, language, culture forever, and we do a lot of land-based arts education across the Northwest Territories. I'm also a moose hide tanner, and I teach hide tanning. I've been to First Nations communities across Canada, revitalizing that land-based art practice. And I'm also a filmmaker and a visual artist and other things. Masi.
Tores, my name is Elle Haetta Isaksen. I am from Datno, in the northern part of Sápmi on the Norwegian side, the exact same place where Beaska is from. I am an artist, a musician, a singer, a yoiker, but also soon an actress. There will be coming a movie next year where I've had the honor of playing the main character. And in this movie, but also in all of my music and all of the music I have written for the past few years, it's always with a political message or some kind of activism in my art. So I've also been an activist as long as I can remember. It started as an activism in my own school, convincing my friends to always talk Sami. But it has now become a lifestyle, environmentally, climate-wise, but also being a land protector, defender, if we are going to use that word today. So, yeah.
Hello, my name is Qivioq Løvstrøm in Norway, and I'm from Galatlidunet, also known as Greenland. And I am an assistant professor at the University of Greenland, Ilisimatusarfik. And in my free time, I'm also the chair of the Human Rights Council of Greenland. So from my point of view, it will be more how the reason I even joined the council was because I was a part of something called Uranimag, which is an organization against uranium mining in Greenland. And we weren't doing quite well. Well, we were doing okay, but it became really popular when we started working with artists, and music and art became involved in the movement. And that's when it became popularized, and that the people started working with us and against the government and other mining companies. So I know very well the importance of art in a movement when we fight for human rights. And I will also come into that historically because of my education and what I teach at the university. So I am not myself an artist, but half of my family, all of my family from my father's side are artists, either in theater or in music. So I do have it in my blood, but I will not claim to be an artist.
Willie Jan and Sarote, Melissa Shaginoff Suzettelan, Yudishu at Kodakara Atlan, na itini Anna Kayak Sensiaden, artist at curator, Auntie Gogashna, Chinan Kotan was at Atlan. It's good to see everyone here today. My name is Melissa Shaginoff. I am Caribou and Fish Eater clan from Night Dinyana, or the Log Over the River, or Chicaloon Village. And I am an artist, a curator, an auntie, and I would say that the primary sort of crux of the work that I do is visiting. I do a lot of work trying to see each other and communicate and find ways in which we can understand each other's perspective. So the way that I protect or defend the land, I think, is a much more soft approach and a way to be on the land and to harvest from the land and to learn how to treat our plant and animal relatives. So, Chinan.
Thank you. Taitatallu was asked to be host of this panel, so I'll tell you a little bit about Taitatallu. It's an artist collective based in Qivioq in Sápmi on the Norwegian occupied side of Sápmi. And it's an artist collective that has now 21, I believe, partners there, and it was started in 2014 and has really grown fast and is now on venues like this. The founder was, or the two founders was Marhanne Saara, who was one of the 3 Sami artists at the Venezia Biennale this year, where I was also a curator, and together with Liisa Rauna-Finnbug, who is, I believe, on another panel tonight. So that's shortly. It's a very diverse crew of artists in Taitatallu. It's photography, writing, visual arts, music, filmmaking, everything. So that's briefly about Taitatallu. And I can tell a little bit about me also, why maybe I'm in this panel. Though I'm not an artist in like a regular sense, then I seem to approach life pretty holistically and use whatever tools necessary to get the message or try to change the world for the better. And art and music and writing and acting. I was co-acting on the movie with Elle. There are many tools, so I try to utilize them all. So that's shortly about me. Yeah, and you told where we're from. Yeah, how should we dive into things? Okay, I see I know of 2 similarities in this panel as a starting point. And that's how you, Qivioq, good pronunciation, told about how art and music and so forth was part of opposing the mining industry. And on the other side of me here sits Elle that also uses her artistry very politically. So if we can start from that, if you can tell how that movement went over at Kalatlit Nuunat.
Thank you. Actually, it's a very long historical tradition in Greenland that whenever there's a conflict beforehand, people would kill each other. And then we eventually became too few. And then we invented the rap battle. and we became really good at it. So it's a part of our oral tradition that we also solve conflicts with singing and to each other and dissing each other. And the one that people laugh at the most loses. So that is a very ingrained part of our culture, even though some seem to have forgotten it, it's still in our DNA. And so when, in the 70s, when a lot of the very big protests started in Greenland, we saw a lot of singers, sume, and others, start singing about the oppression that they were feeling. And there's a movie about it that I highly want you to see. It's called The Sound of a Revolution. But besides that, what many people tend to forget, the person who suggested that we should have a permanent forum for indigenous people's issues was a Greenlandic woman, Henrietta Rasmussen. Besides being that she was a poet, she invented basically what people called the indigenous feminist movement in Greenland, we can call it that, and made a newspaper called Qivioq, where other people could write in their own poetry and the imagery to really showcase the indigenous pride, and also to showcase that they wanted to be indigenous women who are not whitewashed, so to say. My mother was actually one of the very first to write a poem in that one. And I did not know about it until this year. She never told me. But the music and theater really took hold in the 70s and the 80s. And because of that tradition, we now see really, really fantastic musicians in Greenland taking up that handle. We have Shaginoff, who is really fantastic at speaking about what they experience in Greenland, what they see in Qivioq, and especially climate change. And then we have Qivioq Løvstrøm, who is a poet who really understands how to say what the social problems in Greenland are, and how they're connected to colonialism. And so the good thing about our artists, I have noticed, they don't do silo thinking. They know that everything is connected, that you cannot talk about social justice without including climate, and you have to include colonialism and decolonization in a way that you don't start fights. It started that way, but all young artists are somehow always a little bit angry. And then we eventually figure out that anger meets anger, so we have to find a way to have a dialogue. And that's the beauty that you see the cycle of this, that the anger and then the kind of like the dialogue, and then anger and dialogue. But it's also very ugly, because the reason we have this cycle is that we keep meeting the same issues, that we keep meeting capitalism and mining industries that keep trying to take away our land. And that's why in Qivioq we often say that a victory for Sápmi is a victory for Greenland, because we can see ourselves in your situation. So yeah, it's a very long answer, but there's a history behind what we are experiencing now, and how we're using art and music to fight against oppression. And I think it's extremely inspiring, because as an activist, because that is primarily what I am, it can get extremely exhausting to keep fighting the same issues again and again and again. But then when you meet artists that just create beautiful things, they hurt, but they're also beautiful, and they give you energy. And you gave me energy yesterday, thank you. So there's a lot of these things that also give power.
Yes, I can just talk about like our side of this mining fight. So both me and Beaska have been very involved in a case called Riappavuotna, or in the case based in Riappavuotna, which is a fjord in Finnmark, in northern part of Norwegian occupied Sápmi, where there is a copper mine planned, and the mining waste of this copper mine is supposed to be dumped into the fjord, toxic mining waste, which in itself is pretty fucked up, thank you, in the lack of better words. So Norway is one of the very, very few countries in the world who still do this kind of practice. The biggest mining companies in the world and many, many other countries who have done this before have now forbidden it because it just does not make sense to dump your waste into the fjord. So that's one part of this case, but at the other side, there's also this district is also a reindeer herding district that is already under a lot of pressure. So this mine would be like coming on top of all the other fights that they are struggling with in that area. So it both touches my, like the environmental activist in me, but also the Sami rights fight. So for now, the case has been on hold for a while because we have had a lot of victories, temporary victories. We have seen how our camps and protest camps and people showing up and actually using civil disobedience to stop machines coming to the area, that we have succeeded, and investors have pulled away from the project, and but the end result is still to be revealed at some point, but I choose to be hopeful. Yeah. So in my case, how I have contributed to this fight is like both as an artist, you get like a platform and you can choose how you want to use that platform and that voice, how you want to use your name in the media. And I have tried to use whatever I can to draw attention to this case, but also writing music to express the pain and the anger that we all feel, because this is a reoccurring thing. It's like not a new thing at all. This is the same fight that we have fought, or the activists before us have fought in the Alta River case. So it's just such an ongoing fight, and sometimes you're exhausted, but there's just not an alternative. You can't like give up. I don't know if you want to add to that, maybe.
I'm thinking about which direction we could go now. We have already been talking about anger, colonialism, social problems, and that people get tired. So maybe we'll go that direction from here, and like early on in this panel, so we can try to find solutions at the end. Is that an idea?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Feel free to talk about anger, dark stuff. I can start with myself. Like I mentioned, I also write poems mainly, and I write other stuff also, mainly political stuff, papers. But the poetry for me has been therapy. And we have already mentioned how we get tired, so we also need some kind of system to take care of ourselves and each other. Yeah, if I dive into a personal story then to try to set something of the tiredness we face when it's an ever ongoing struggle. And I believe, or I know that the governments, the authorities, they very seldom care at all. And they have lives on they have blood on their hands. In Sápmi, in Greenland, in Canada, all over the circumpolar area. And I don't understand how they can turn away willingly. When we tell them over and over again, you are literally killing us. So, okay, then it got really dark really fast. Sorry. Yeah. I'll leave the mic open if someone was to take over.
When I think about being a land protector, a water protector, an activist in my community, I think about the work that I do with teaching moose hide tanning and caribou hide tanning. When I first started thinking about the anger of my parents and all of my aunties and uncles going to residential school. And so there was that gap of knowledge in my family where I would have learned from my mother or my aunties, but none of them, all of them went to school. So it took me many, many years to piece together all of the knowledge and the whole entire process for myself to reintroduce that to my family. And there's a lot of frustration and a lot of anger for that knowledge to be missing in my family. And so I started tanning hides over 10 years ago, and I was just going to make moose hide to continue doing my own art, because I do make moccasins and vests and clothing for my family, and I was going to sell it and just be like an artist at home. I haven't been sold anything since I started. There was a need in our community for instructors and for teachers. And so I quickly was asked to be and put into a position as an educator, as a knowledge holder, while I was still learning the practice. And seeing that there was needing these places in our communities to be filled, even though that I wasn't fully, I did not fully have all of the knowledge, yet my elders were there to support me. And they supported me in these positions as a knowledge holder. One of my elders is sitting outside right now. She's one of my teachers, Lucia Nyakalaya. She's an incredible bead worker. I told her to come in so I can give her a shout out. But being able to fill the position in our community, but now my work is to pass all of that knowledge on to as many people as I can, and to make that knowledge accessible. And so I do travel, I do put on hide camps with Dene Nawa. We have a hide camp coming up in my home community, Tlitlikwe, in August 2nd to the 13th. And the opposite of the anger is that in these camps, when we're on the land and we're teaching our practices, and we're together in community, and we have our children and our elders and everybody there, and there's a few days into camp where everybody figures out what they're doing, and figures out where everything is, and figures out who's to asking. So everybody's working, and people are cooking, the kids are laughing, our elders are sharing. Everybody knows what they're doing. Nobody's just, if you're sitting around, you're visiting or you're eating. And it's just a moment, and I just think this is how our communities were. We were happy, we were healthy, and we worked together. And it's always such a beautiful, beautiful moment, being able to do this work.
Thank you for bringing us back up again so beautifully. Yes.
I'm sort of realizing, I'm getting emotional too, realizing on the stage that I think I first even wanted to learn about moose hide through your work and through watching you on social media from a distance, not knowing you, but just seeing another Dene person doing this. And for me, it was kind of like the cool girl thing to do, I'm gonna tan moose hides. But when I started to ask around in my community, I realized that it was much closer to me than I had even realized. And my great-grandfather had been arrested for hunting a moose out of season. And because of that, all of my great uncles and my grandpa went to an orphanage, and they were never like returned home, you know. They lived there, you know, but they were not able to be with their parents. And because of this, the men in my tribe stopped tanning because it became a crime. And they had to do this very thing that was so against themselves, which is, you know, bury the hide or burn it or put it in the water, right? It became no longer this gift that the hide is, right? It's no longer this honoring of that animal who chose you to give itself to you. And so, like, through the process of hide work, I realized that it's this lifelong sort of like knowing of yourself and this undoing of this sort of person that Western society tells us that we have to be, you know. And I just like am so in awe of the work that you've done with Dene Naho, and I think in many ways the movement is moving towards Alaska with Jessica Denny, with different individuals who are tanning hides with my aunties, and I think it's probably like the hardest thing I've ever done, and I'm still like, you don't learn through one hide, you have to learn through so many, and everyone is different. And I think like it gets me to that, you know, you said anger meets anger. And like I lived there for a long time, you know, and I feel like I got a little reputation of of like thinking I was speaking truth, but realizing too that there is like a softness in just being and doing that kind of work, and that is just as important in defending things, just as important as protecting things, is finding your role in the community, you know, and you find that by doing these things in community, by doing them together, you know, because it just feels so right and it feels correct, right? And like right before this, I had done a hide tanning demonstration with a bunch of like 11-year-olds, and they were just all so, oh, ew, it stinks, gross, ooh, there's maggots, you know, as we're fermenting the hide, doing it the Dena'ina way. And by the end, there was kids who were staying like through lunch, pulling the hair, you know, staying through recess to pull the hair, and they got so into it. And I got an email from one of the mothers, and she told me, oh, my son is, you know, he told me that he has to tell all of his schoolmates that he's actually Athabascan, that he's not anything that they called him before, you know, that he can like stand in that power. And I think that that's part of defending a thing, is building capacity with young people. And you build capacity by helping people learn who they are and feel very close to that. And that's, I feel like, through Moosehide and through watching what our brothers and sisters are doing, you know, even across these like arbitrary borders. So, thank you, Mila. Shanann.
I have a follow-up question for you, Melissa. You said that moose-hide tanning was criminalized. Did people still tan moose-hide like in secret, so that this traditional knowledge would go, survive through that criminalization period? Because it rings a bell. It's very similar. We have also had many traditions criminalized and still are, like fishery, lake fishery and so on, hunting, gathering, and so forth. So it's a very familiar thing, for me at least, that you mention. And why I'm asking is that we have kept doing things, even though we are criminals. And that's, I'm so grateful for those who walked before us, that they didn't really care. There was very little police in our area, so they were able to do and live their own lives. So that was the follow-up question. Did they continue in secret?
So Chicxulub is just about an hour north of Qivioq, or what is known as Anchorage. And so it was pretty close to where there was a lot of settlers. And so part of, in the United States, is they put on all these sort of hunting seasons, right? When you can hunt a moose, when you can hunt other things. And it's really kind of against sort of our traditions. Like I learned from my elder, Jeannie Maxim, talking about how we would only work on really hides in the spring because they were smaller and they were more manageable. And that the fall moose were too big. Like that was something that was, you were gonna end up, kind of offending that moose because you couldn't finish it, right? Because it was too difficult. So she told us that we were only, so these laws kind of like put us in this position of not even being able to do the thing that was so aligned with what we knew how to do, right? Because the moose, it's such an amazing knowledge and technology, right? Its brain breaks down its body. Its bones are punching tools, its hind legs are our Nakehk'o, or the side scraper, right? So it's like, I think that people certainly still hunted, but the process of working on a hide takes enough time that the wardens would have arrested them, like they did my great-grandfather, and change the course of his son's lives and my father's life and my life, So I think that people did what they could.
Can I?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of really great art also comes from being in the dark and feeling alone and feeling miserable. And it can come out in anger, but it can also come out in hope. And at least for my people, we have always been extremely hopeful. We've always been very good at looking at the bright side of life. And because of that, a lot of the time we find art again and find a hope again. For me, I lost my language when I was a kid. We had a teacher who was not a very good teacher, so I decided not to speak Greenlandic anymore. So by the time I was 11, I couldn't speak Greenlandic anymore. I got my language back by listening to Greenlandic rap music and Greenlandic rock music. And coincidentally, all of that music was very revolutionary and very anti-colonial. So it was a good way of healing and getting back my language, but also a good way of figuring out, okay, what is my coping mechanism? What am I going to do from now on? And that was to fight for my rights as an Inuk. And I think many young people are doing that now as well, because we, at least in our capital, we're only 19,000, but it's quite a lot for us. People speak Danish a lot, and they don't speak Greenlandic as fluently as they want to. And because of that, they maybe feel less Greenlandic than they actually are, less Inuk than and because we sometimes indoctrinate ourselves into believing that we are less than we are, because we start to believe in blood quantum and other things that are not part of our culture. And I think with music and with art, a lot of people find healing. And that is one of the things that I truly believe in, that art is the best healing power. Yesterday, I had a horrible headache, and I just wanted to go home. And then you started singing. And I started dancing along to the music. And then afterwards, I realized, whoa, I don't have a headache. So there's something there. There's something in music and in moving that heals us. And I just really wanted to come into that part of art as well.
Thank you. What a compliment. No, I just wanted to add to that I feel like it has been like the biggest gift given to me. Like, my work is making art, and the art I make heals myself. So every time I'm in pain, the only thing I can do is write, and that in itself is making the pain go away. But the biggest gift of that is when I perform, I get to offer healing to other people and my own people. And like you said, I relate very much to the how should I say, like losing the language. I never did that, but a lot of people around me have, and I think we have a lot of the same, like identity issues or conflicts, like am I less of a Sami because I have lost these things along the way. And what has been so empowering throughout my career or my journey is that through my music I have connected to like other Samis who lost their language and who are actually learning Sami language through my lyrics, but also connecting to the people who never lost the language, and like building those bridges is just so powerful. And now I'm healing your headache, so it's that's amazing.
Doug, you're in the audience. Are you comfortable with me sharing Ella Maria's inspiration? Okay. Doug told me this morning, and shout out to Doug, he helped us pull together the lavvo outside. Yeah, it seemed such a nice opportunity to share this. Doug told me this morning that he came in this room when you started playing last night, and he was like, I have to get closer, and then he came up to the front, and I was in the back because I was nervous about our thing. But then Doug told me this morning that, yeah, he used to make music and play in a band. So this morning he has reached out to his old band members because he was so inspired by your concert and want to start doing music again. And that's amazing. Yeah, so you will connect after.
Definitely.
Please come to the mic, Doug.
But as he's
You get the mic in your hand there.
I just love what I'm hearing here, and you just reaffirm that it's my old elder, Matt Tom, he always used to say, keep it going. So keep it going. That music made me cry last night. There was something in it, and it's pretty hard. It's like trying to squeeze water out of a rock when it comes to my tears. I was beaten when I cried. I wasn't allowed to cry, but that cut through something. And we did play music, and we used to sing about family, and we just fell apart. All our instruments were handmade. At one time, we must have owned 150 handmade flutes made out of bird feathers, bird bones. We used to have little whistles. We used to sing, and we used to sing about loving each other. So I'm going to encourage that's Phil. He's like my dad. Eh? I'm going to say, let's do this again, because you know, and this is for men too. You know, you guys got to get yourselves into the counseling rooms, because we had to. I tell men, we got to sit down and talk about our problems. You know, I tell my son, I really remember that when the message about raising your son as well. You know, I have to apologize to my son lots and say, sorry, son. I was raised with soft hands, but it was the heavy hands that hurt. You know, and my mother, till the day she died, she scared the crap out of me when she was mad. Because she was right. You know, it's okay. You know, like a piece of hide, when you put it on you, it feels better when it's softer, when it's worked. And us men, we have to soften ourselves. Don't follow this, what you see on the movies. You know, I got to take my own advice too, you know, but I realized I was missing something, and it was the music. So thank you. It really touched me last night, and I regret I never came here sooner. Yeah, thank you very much. And
Thank you so much, Doug. Yeah, speaking after Doug is always hard. Yeah, we have youth as inspiration. I'm not that young anymore, so I also have to turn to Elle, because, and not only to you, but to our artists all around the world, that I'm so grateful, because in the line of work we are doing, defending the lands on the front lines, it's sometimes it's devastating, it's so hard, and you get so tired. So in the darkest moments, it's the artists that has held me up. So I am forever grateful for our artists. You are healers. You are the ones who takes care of the rest of us. So I just wanted to say that. And then a little funny story, because it got so serious now. You mentioned the documentary, The Sound of Revolution, and I also would encourage everyone to try to get a hold on that. I don't know if it's available online.
It's available online, and you can just ask me for the name of it. But you could also write The Sound of Revolution on Google, and something that sounds like Sume will come up. And again, highly recommend that you watch it. Very, very inspiring, and very, very cool people. Yes.
Yeah, and my little story is that the last time I went to Nuuk, or the only time I went to Nuuk, in the airplane they were showing this documentary about Sume, and it was so energizing and so healing, and it showed that even though we are on the front lines today, our peoples, they have been on the front lines forever. And it was so inspirational. And I was so happy when I found that out that in ICC Greenland, Hjalmar Dahl also was a part of Sume, and I was going to visit him. So I got a signed copy of the Sume album, and it's on my bookshelf back home as a honoring of those who went before us. And I also want to mention, since I introduced also Taitatallu, that the inspiration for Taitatallu was the Qivioq. It was a group of artists in the 70s, the Sami artists, they gathered and made this really strong political art during the Alta rebellion, some calls it, or the Alta Qivioq river case, when we were fighting the dams. And those artists are still a huge inspiration even today for many of us. Well, now I don't know where we go. You want to jump in?
Yeah, I'm really loving what everybody's talking about, and about our use and our teachings, and what Doug shared with us about softening ourselves, and moose hide tanning is like a softening process. And I've worked with writers and poets who've called it a radical selfening of softness for ourselves, and in a form of self-care. And so I find that, like, as activists and land defenders, we are confronted with so many things that we see in our communities, and trying to make a positive change, and also keeping ourselves healthy. And through the pandemic, we haven't been able to gather, and so we've had to postpone a lot of the work that I've been doing, so I haven't been able to be in community. And there was such a noticeable difference in my mental health because I wasn't able to do the work that I love with my community, and how important it is for us to gather as community people, for us to be on the land and doing the work that fulfills us and connects us to each other in the land and to our animals that sustain us. And so I was just, one of the things about the work that I do on the land is when you're working with animals, when you're harvesting, when you're cutting fish, or if you're picking berries or medicine, there's a Dene concept is to be happy while you're working. And when I was little, I used to think that was such a simple idea. But when you're making it a conscious decision to have a positive mindset while you're working, you're learning how to be incorporating this way of thinking into your life, and that's just to think in a good way for yourself and for whatever you're gathering and whatever work you're doing. You're putting that good energy into that, because you don't know where that hide's going to go, because somebody's going to make moccasins for an elder or for a leader, or the berries you're picking you're going to gift to somebody, and they'll make bannock for somebody and feed them. So the energy that you're putting into things is going out into the world, and that's coming from you. And so we have to I always love that concept when I actually realize what it actually meant. Very long into my process being oh. So many of our stories that you hear, you're just years later be that's what he meant. And so I just love, those moments of becoming aware of a concept like an elder shares with you through a story that you're not really you're not meant to know what it is at the time, but later on while you're continuing the practice and doing the work or on the land, you're just kind of have a moment of connections. You're connecting with that story in this moment, in this place where you're supposed to be doing what you're supposed to be doing, and it's just really magical.
It made me smile a bit because my mom made my national costume for me, my assert. And yes, it is healing and it's beautiful, but my mom was swearing the most I have ever heard her while she was making my clothes. And we actually made a joke about it. We said that all her swearing will keep the bad spirit away because she was swearing so bad and so much. And in the end, I even became apologetic, I'm so sorry that I'm getting my confirmation. And she was like, but I never feel more beautiful or more loved than when I wear those. So they are 20 kilos, so I didn't bring them with me. So you're not going to see me at my most beautiful. But maybe someday when you come to Greenland, you'll be able to see me in them. And because I feel that it smells when she's tanning for us it's sealskin. And but it was done with a purpose, and she did it for me. She made that costume and spent 3 years of her life to make that, and I'm so grateful for that. And that is also an art form indeed, and very difficult as well. Very few Greenlandic people have their own assert now because it takes so long. The resources are so expensive sometimes. So I just wanted to come in on that because that's why I was laughing a bit.
Can I just add to that what I'm wearing today is what my mother has made, and in every thread and every of these, I don't think I yet know how much time it takes to actually make this, and she has sewn my clothing since I was a little baby. So and I have grown a lot in this time, so she always had to every year make new. And I just love that, what you just said about this concept of the energy you put into your work. It's when you put it out into the world, it's not lost, it's not gone, it's gonna continue on and energize other people. And I I just thought that was so beautiful when you said that my mother is here with me now and she's empowering me, and maybe that's something we can tell ourselves as activists, because sometimes it can feel really hopeless as the fight, the struggles, the battle in itself, it's so huge, and you just feel like whatever I'm contributing will never be enough. But it is. And I often tell this to like younger Sami activists, that no one will probably ever thank you for all the energy and all the time you put into this battle, this fight, because no one will know. Many of these times you will be alone, you will have to battle your own fears, your own demons, and make yourself wake up the next morning, and nobody will ever know what that took for you. So I just want to like thank all of you as much as I can for this moment of sharing, because it gives me so much, and I just think this proves that. And thank you, Doug. I can't even, I'm gonna start crying, but these like gatherings, as you said, it's, yeah, we have to believe that it's at the end gonna be enough.
I feel like there's, oh,
We have 8 minutes left, just to let you know. Yeah.
I won't go beyond
Go
8
ahead.
minutes. I feel like what I keep hearing is that like that we need, and from Doug, is that we need to like have our cup full, meaning that like we need to fully sort of like know ourselves and to be healed ourselves, you know, at the same time, because it is like a really thankless thing to be on the front lines at times, and often very violent, you know. And I think it's like, how do you fill your cup up with, we call it Nazi Zaga snel, I mean, you put your thoughts into what you make, and you have to be good thoughts because you're going to be giving it to someone, right? And I think that like this whole, what we've been talking about is like, if we're looking at the work that we're doing now and look at the healing that we're doing as something that we're passing on, that like only lives with us for a second, I think that like in many ways it's like a metaphor for a moose hide or beadwork or something that you create, right? It only lives with you for a moment. And if you think of it as like having to pass it on, how are you filling your cup up enough so you have enough to give, you know? And yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Mila.
I actually had to double check it since I'm a word nerd as well. And I mean, we all love our languages, but talking about both reclaiming traditions, languages, but also music, the word inspire means to excite, encourage, or to breathe life into. It comes from the Latin word that means to inflame or to blow into. When you inspire something or someone, it is as if you are blowing air over a low flame to make it grow. And it actually has the words, the in spirit. So when you are inspired, you are living in spirit. So when you are inspiring people, you are inspiring them to live in spirit. And I think one of the ways to fill the cups of each other is not just to put the positive thoughts into your everyday work, but to remember that the community is work as well. So to say thank you to each other, not just for the land or the air or the water, but thank you to each other, so we don't feel that fucking lonely in front, because we do.
Thank you, Timimi. And you mentioned community, and I think that is also a key word for us, because yeah, I also been there. I thought I was alone in this world in the darkest moments, but when I realized, and what you, Elle, mentioned, the feeling of not being enough, the day I realized that you do as much as you can, and that has to be enough, then my life got easier. And when I realized that my community is so loving, caretaking, and I realized I could take a moment off these battles for quite a time, actually, to recover. So that's just a reminder, I think, for us that we are allowed to rest, and we have to allow ourselves to rest because it gets dangerous else. Just as a reminder, we are enough. You're enough. You and you and you.
And that's so beautiful coming from you, because the Beaska is like really one of our main heroes in Sápmi, and no, but you are, and they are like agreeing. But for us who, or for me who I've grown up in the same place as you and always looked up to you, it's, you know, you can always feel like, oh, I'm not doing as much as he is doing. I could always do. And that coming from you, like you're allowed to rest, I think that is so beautiful. And I think that is important also for us who are standing in the front lines and who are role models, to tell each other thank you, and to tell each other you are enough and you're allowed to rest now. I think that's very important.
Yeah, we have 3 minutes left, and we can go a little bit over time. So we can make some closure comments if you want. Yes?
We have Nyla here at the back who has offered to do a healing song at the end if you all agree. When you are done.
Oh, thank you.
There'll be a healing song when this is over. That's what it was. Yeah, they wanted her to speak into the microphone. I also really, just before all of this, a few days ago, a very big national hero of Greenland passed away. To Christiansen, he was the man who actually designed our flag, the Greenlandic flag. And these earrings I'm wearing right now are the colors that he would often use in his designs. And I wanted to honor him today, so I'm wearing this. And also just to showcase that art, in this case, actually connected a whole nation together, a whole people, into becoming Galatlit Nunat. I know that many people would rather be Inuit Nunat or Nunakput, but right now it's Galatlit Nunat. Yes, but I really just wanted to really show that he knew it was political. He knew how important it was that we had our own flag, and that it didn't look like a cross, that we didn't look like the Danes. And I just thought it was so important to really honor him today as well. Yeah, thank you.
Final comment. I think that when we talk about defending something, it kind of feels like we're always up against it. And we are in many ways. But I think like we brought it back to sort of healing and community, which is, I think, where at least I spend most of my time, because that is where I fill my cup up, and that's where I, prepare myself and also get guidance for all this defending and protecting that needs to be done. And I think that what we all have to do is look at all of these things, confronting Arctic colonialism, I think was the description, as all of our jobs, and that, it can't just be on my shoulders, it can't just be on your shoulders, it can't just be on your shoulders, that we all have to shoulder this burden, and that means listening and taking perspective, and sometimes being soft, and sometimes being real hard. So that's it. Hana.
Melaw.
Last comments? I really have a hard time calling myself an activist. I think that the work that we do and the work that I do with my elders is it's inherently political and an activist, and I feel like every time I go on my land and I assert my inherent rights on my land, that I'm protecting the land, and I'm out there observing, and I'm seeing the change of the climate change, how it's affecting my land. And I think all of us in the northern climate, we see that when we go out in our traditional territories, and witnessing that, and witnessing the effects on the animals that sustain our lives. And sorry. Like, it's really powerful for us to be able to tell those stories, and the grief that brings to us, because it's really difficult to see that when you're out there. Sorry. So, like. So whether we like to call ourselves activists or not, if we're traveling on our lands, if we're on our lands, we're connecting with the land, and that's also a relationship that constantly needs to be nourished, and that also nourishes us and our spirits and who we are, and also. Just being there and with our land, that's a form of protecting our land in that way. So, Messi.
Okay, final words. I think I'm learning a lot just sitting here, but like growing up, and one of the things that I take away from this, and also something that I have been thinking about a lot in the past, is this the fill your own cup kind of thing. And I think at the core of many indigenous cultures, it is this sacrifice. You always give back, or part of your hunt you give back, and that is at the core of our culture. And I've always thought of my time and my life as a sacrifice, that this is what I'm going to give. But in the past maybe the past year, I've been thinking of what I'm going to sacrifice to myself, what am I going to give back to myself, as if there's like a fire, just like how we started this whole art summit. You sacrifice to the fire, and what am I going to sacrifice to my own fire? Because I in many ways feel like I never chose to be an activist. It's something that I was set to do. I was born an activist, and I want to die an activist. That's what I feel that so strongly, and I don't want my activism to die before me. So that's why we have to sacrifice to ourselves also. Take care of that fire that keeps you going.
Yeah. Wow. I feel like we just really started a really good conversation. It's so sad that our time is up, because this was healing. This hour for me, and yeah.
The healing song.
Yeah, I won't talk anymore. We got offered a healing song, and we really appreciate it. So we'll conclude here. Thank you.
Thank you to the panelists and the moderators for being so open and honest with us today. My mic's not on, but I'm gonna lead it over to Nyla. And just before Nyla takes us into lunch, just to let you guys know, lunch is slightly delayed. There is a fire outside, so you can go out there, take some breaths, fill up your cup before lunch. Lunch will be in here at 1, and so I'd like to invite these three up to the front.
Yeah, Nyla, Kluge, Miigwans, Uye, Fort Selkirk, Yukon, Northern Shoshone. Yeah, this people's really touched my heart. I think when we talk about healing our people, it takes a lot of courage to be, like you say, sacrifice your life for the well-being of your people and your land, water, air, and fire, the 4 sacred elements. I've known Doug for many years. He's a trailblazer in a lot of ways for our people. And ancestors said to never give up our fight for our land, water, air, and fire, and our people and our nations. So this healing song is to help the people, help the land, help the animals, help our sacred fires each one of us are gifted with. Our Creator is foremost the number one thing in our lives, Creator and creation of all life. So I'm blessed to be able to sing the song for all people, especially the panelists who sacrificed, and Doug, who sacrificed so much to help our people heal and become better for the next generation. So if you think about praying, pray for what you need for yourself, pray for what you need for your families and your communities.
Sit on his lap.
Yeah, sit on his lap.
I'll stand there. Which microphone? This is live? No, this is just something, this is a chant we do. When we sing hand game songs and we do warm-ups, we were singing a song with my cousin, and we call it the snow melting song. When the snow melts, it comes as a flood. And it's like, I just wanted to share it because a guy sung for us in school, and he said, I want to sing for you so you have courage. So I want to share this. It was a play song between me and my cousin. So when the snow melts and that water floods down amongst the trees, it's the trees are the ones that hold everything together, the people who stand strong. So when you're out there working, and when these floods come, it's that strength of your art, your prayers, and the strength from your mothers. It was, we thought it was just kind of cool because we do this movement like this, eh? So when the floods come, but it's a warm-up song for us because sometimes we have to sing a long time. And sometimes you get tired. We do that to strengthen us. Because sometimes when we stop, we have to keep strong somehow. So your hides, your sewing, looking at a tree, your artwork, coming to places like this to gather that strength. Because when those floods come, they don't bother you, they don't touch you. So, and but we sung that song as play, because our stomachs get sore when we sing. Sometimes for 12 hours a day straight. We sing at the hand games. So.
Imaka o kiu pingasu.